I always believed family comes first. My sister Diana and I were inseparable growing up, always having each other's back. When she married Greg, I had my doubts, but kept them to myself. I never imagined that one day a simple financial request would escalate into violence that left me bloodied and broken on my parents' doorstep. The betrayal cut deeper than my physical wounds. Before I share how my own flesh and blood betrayed me when I needed them most, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if family betrayal stories resonate with you. Growing up in a tight-knit suburb of Chicago, I learned early that family was everything. As a construction project manager at 32, I had built a stable life for myself. I owned my modest apartment, had a decent savings account, and always paid my bills on time. My credit score was something I took pride in maintaining, a reflection of the responsible lifestyle my parents had instilled in me. Diana was 3 years older than me, but I had always been her protector. In elementary school, when Billy Thompson pulled her hair and stole her lunch money, I was the one who confronted him despite being smaller. Throughout high school, I vetted her potential boyfriends with the skepticism of someone twice my age. We shared everything from childhood secrets to adult dreams. She was not just my sister, but my best friend. When Diana met Greg at a real estate networking event 6 years ago, something changed. Greg was charming, confident, and always dressed in expensive suits. He called himself a real estate entrepreneur, but his business seemed to consist mainly of talking about potential deals rather than closing them. Still, he swept Diana off her feet with grandiose promises and a lifestyle that seemed exciting compared to her accounting job. I remember pulling her aside at their engagement party. We were standing by the bar, and I gently suggested she might want to slow things down. "Have you really gotten to know him, Dee? Something about him just feels off to me." She dismissed my concerns with a laugh, attributing them to my overprotective nature. Their wedding was extravagant beyond what either of them could afford. I later learned they had maxed out 3 credit cards to pay for it. Over the next few years, I watched with growing concern as they maintained a lifestyle that seemed impossible on their incomes. Greg drove a new BMW while Diana showcased designer handbags on social media. They took lavish vacations to the Maldives and posted endless photos from exclusive restaurants. At family gatherings, Diana became increasingly distant. Our weekly coffee dates dwindled to monthly, then quarterly. When we did meet, she would spend most of the time on her phone or talking about their latest acquisition or investment opportunity. It was always the next big thing that would set them up for life, though nothing ever seemed to materialize. Last spring, after nearly 3 months of minimal contact, I received a surprisingly warm text from Diana inviting me to dinner at their new house. I was both pleased and suspicious. The property was in an upscale neighborhood where homes started at $700,000. As I parked my practical Honda beside Greg's gleaming BMW, I wondered how they had qualified for such a mortgage. Inside the house was impressively furnished with what looked like designer pieces. Greg greeted me with unusual enthusiasm, clapping me on the back as if we were old friends rather than reluctant relatives. Diana hugged me tightly, commenting on how long it had been since we really caught up. The evening started pleasantly enough. Diana had prepared an elaborate meal, accompanied by expensive wine that Greg kept pouring generously. They asked about my work, seemed interested in my recent promotion, and shared amusing anecdotes about their neighbors. It felt like the old Diana was back, and I allowed myself to relax slightly. After dessert, Greg casually mentioned a property they were looking at. "It's an incredible investment opportunity, Bob. Prime location, multiple units, guaranteed return." His eyes had that gleam I had come to associate with his schemes. "We could flip it in 18 months for double the investment," Diana added, her excitement palpable. "The market in that area is exploding." I nodded politely, wondering why they were telling me this. Then came the real purpose of the dinner. "The thing is," Greg said, swirling his wine glass, "the bank needs a guarantor for the mortgage since my business is still establishing consistent income records." Diana reached across the table for my hand. "We thought of you immediately, Bob. Your credit history is impeccable, and it's just a formality, really. We will be making all the payments." They presented it, as if they were offering me an opportunity rather than asking for a massive favor that could potentially ruin me financially. I kept my expression neutral, though internally alarm bells were ringing loudly. "Can I see the paperwork?" Greg immediately produced a folder with documents, as if he had been waiting for this moment all evening. I promised to review them and get back to them in a few days, despite their not-so-subtle pressure to sign immediately. At home, I examined the papers carefully. The loan amount was staggering, nearly $1 million. A quick internet search on the property address revealed it was in an area with declining, not rising property values. Further research into Greg's business history uncovered multiple bankruptcy filings and credit defaults that he had conveniently never mentioned. I consulted Ryan, a financial advisor friend, who was blunt in his assessment. "If you sign this, you are taking on all the risk, with none of the reward. If they default, which given their history seems likely, you will be completely liable." The next day, I called Diana directly, preferring to keep the conversation between siblings. "Di, I have reviewed everything, and I just can't be a guarantor on this loan. The risk is too high, and honestly, it doesn't look like a good investment." There was a long silence before she responded, her voice suddenly cold. "I never thought you would let family down like this. After everything we have been through, this isn't about letting anyone down," I tried to explain. "It's about making a sound financial decision." "Greg was right about you," she said bitterly. "You have always been jealous of our success, always trying to hold us back with your small thinking." The call ended abruptly, and I sat staring at my phone in disbelief. Over the next several days, both Diana and Greg bombarded me with messages alternating between guilt trips and vague threats about family loyalty. I maintained my position but felt a growing unease about the intensity of their reaction. A week later, around 9:30 p.m., a thunderous knocking shook my apartment door. Through the peephole, I could see Greg, his face flushed. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, thinking I could reason with him face to face. "Bob, we need to talk," Greg said with unnerving calmness when I opened the door. Something in his demeanor should have warned me, but I naively thought a direct conversation might resolve things. "Come in," I offered, stepping aside. "But I want you to know my decision is final." Greg entered my apartment, surveying it with obvious disdain. I closed the door, turning to find him standing uncomfortably close. His breath reeked of whiskey. "Nice place," he said sarcastically, "very modest. Is this really all you aspire to? Diana and I are trying to build something significant, and you are blocking our future over what? Some paperwork." I maintained my composure, gesturing toward my couch. "Greg, I understand you are disappointed, but putting my name on $1 million loan isn't just paperwork. The property isn't a good investment, and your financial history makes this too risky." His face transformed instantly, rage replacing the forced calm. "You checked up on my financial history," his voice rose sharply. "Who gave you the right to dig into my personal affairs? When you ask someone to guarantee a loan of that size, you expect them to do due diligence," I replied, feeling the tension building in the room. "Due diligence," Greg spat the words. "This is family, not some corporate transaction. Diana has been crying for days because her brother doesn't trust her." "This isn't about trust," I started to explain. I never finished the sentence. Greg's fist connected with my face, so suddenly I had no time to react. The blow caught me just above my right eye. The pain immediate and shocking. I staggered backward, tasting blood as it ran down into my mouth. "Greg, stop." I raised my hands defensively. "This isn't going to solve anything." "No, but it sure feels good," he snarled, advancing toward me. "You think you're better than us with your perfect credit score and your responsible lifestyle. You have no vision, no ambition." He lunged forward again, grabbing my shirt collar and slamming me against the wall. Family photos crashed to the floor, glass shattering. I tried to push him away, but Greg had the advantage of both size and rage. His next punch landed on my ribs, knocking the wind from me. "We trusted you," he shouted, punctuating each word with another blow. "Diana defended you when everyone said you would never amount to anything." I managed to duck his next swing, trying to move toward the door. "You need to leave before this gets worse," I gasped, my vision blurring from the blood streaming into my eye. Greg grabbed my arm, twisting it violently behind my back. The sickening pop and instant fire of pain told me my shoulder had dislocated. I cried out, collapsing to my knees as the agony radiated through my entire upper body. "This is what happens to people who don't help family," Greg hissed into my ear, his weight pressing me down. "Next time you might consider being more cooperative." A sudden banging on my apartment door interrupted his assault. "Everything okay in there?" called my neighbor James. I heard shouting and crashing. Greg straightened up immediately, smoothing his shirt as if suddenly aware of what he had done. "Think about our offer again," he said with disturbing calmness. "Family should stick together." He stepped over me and walked to the door, composing himself before opening it. I heard him tell James everything was fine. Just a heated discussion about sports. Then he was gone, leaving me bleeding on my living room floor, surrounded by broken glass and toppled furniture. With excruciating effort, I pulled myself up using my good arm. My face felt hot and swollen, blood still flowing freely from the gash above my eye. My right arm hung uselessly at an unnatural angle, every slight movement sending waves of nausea through me. Looking in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eye was already swelling shut, and the cut would definitely need stitches. Shaking with shock and pain, I fumbled for my phone, dropping it twice before managing to check for messages. A new text from Diana had arrived during the assault. "You should have just signed the mortgage." Greg was really upset when he left. The calculated coldness of her message hit me harder than Greg's fists. My sister knew what her husband planned to do and had done nothing to stop it. Worse, she seemed to be justifying it. I tried calling my parents, but there was no answer. It was nearly 10:30 p.m., and they typically went to bed early. I needed medical attention, but the thought of explaining this at an emergency room alone felt overwhelming. Despite the pain, I decided to drive to my parents' house 15 minutes away. Each movement was agony, as I awkwardly maneuvered into my car, unable to use my right arm at all. Driving one-handed through my tears and blood-stained vision was perhaps the most dangerous thing I had ever done, but desperation pushed me forward. The normally short drive seemed endless. At every stoplight, waves of dizziness threatened to overtake me. Twice I had to pull over to vomit from the pain. Finally, I arrived at my parents' modest suburban home, parking haphazardly in their driveway. The walk to their front door took everything I had left. My legs felt increasingly unsteady, black spots dancing at the edges of my vision. I managed to ring the doorbell before my knees finally gave way. As I collapsed on their welcome mat, I heard my father's voice through the growing darkness. Who could that be at this hour? The last thing I remember was the door opening, and my father's horrified gasp. "Dear God, Martha, call 911. My father's panicked voice penetrated the fog of semi-consciousness. I felt his gentle hands turning me over, his sharp intake of breath, as he saw the extent of my injuries. "Bob, son, who did this to you?" The concern in his voice was so different from the coldness in Diana's text that tears mixed with the blood on my face. "Greg," I managed to whisper before another wave of pain from my shoulder overwhelmed me. "Diana knows." My mother appeared, phone in hand, her face pale with shock. "The ambulance is coming." "Oh, my baby, your face." Her hands trembled as she brushed hair from my forehead, carefully avoiding the still bleeding gash. Time became disjointed after that. I remember snippets, the wailing sirens, paramedics asking questions I could barely answer, the jolt of pain as they moved me onto a stretcher. One paramedic, a young woman with kind eyes, kept talking to me soothingly as they loaded me into the ambulance. "Significant facial trauma, possible orbital fracture, confirmed shoulder dislocation," she reported into her radio. "Patient is showing signs of shock and potential concussion." My parents followed the ambulance to the hospital, my father driving, while my mother continuously called my phone, which I had left in my car. Later, she told me Diana had finally answered, responding to my mother's frantic explanation with chilling indifference. He probably provoked Greg somehow. You know how stubborn Bob can be. The emergency room was a blur of bright lights, concerned medical professionals, and searing pain. The doctor confirmed multiple injuries. A dislocated shoulder, requiring immediate reduction, a fractured orbital socket, a concussion, and numerous contusions. The shoulder relocation was excruciating despite medication. I screamed through clenched teeth as the doctor manipulated my arm back into place with a nauseating pop. While a nurse sutured the gash above my eye, 2 police officers appeared at my bedside. Officer Ramirez, a serious man with compassionate eyes, took notes as I recounted what happened, including the context of the mortgage guarantor request. His partner photographed my injuries with clinical detachment, the camera flash intensifying my headache. "We will need a formal statement when you are feeling better," Officer Ramirez explained, "but this is clearly felony assault. You should consider pressing charges." "He will," my father stated firmly from beside my bed. My mother nodded in agreement, her eyes red from crying but resolute. Just as the officers were leaving, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Diana's voice carried clearly through the partially open door. "That is my brother in there. I have every right to see him." She burst into the room, stopping short at the sight of me. For a moment, genuine shock registered on her face before she composed herself. "Bob, this has all gotten out of hand. Greg says you were throwing accusations at him and things just escalated." Escalated. My mother stood up, her small frame vibrating with fury. "Your husband dislocated your brother's shoulder and nearly fractured his skull." "Martha, calm down," Diana said dismissively. "Men get into fights sometimes. Bob isn't completely innocent here." My father, normally the peacekeeper, stepped forward. "Diana, either you have lost your mind or you are so deep in denial you can't see what is happening. Your husband committed a serious crime tonight." "A crime?" Diana laughed incredulously. "It's a family matter that got a little physical. Bob shouldn't have refused to help us after everything we have done for him." "What exactly have you done for him?" my mother demanded. Before Diana could respond, Officer Ramirez returned, likely drawn by the rising voices. "Is there a problem here? This is my daughter," my father explained wearily. "Sister of the victim and wife of the assailant." Officer Ramirez added, studying Diana with professional interest. "Ma'am, are you aware that we are investigating this as a felony assault case?" Diana's confident demeanor faltered slightly. "Officer, this is just a misunderstanding between family members. A misunderstanding that resulted in multiple serious injuries," he countered. "We will need to speak with your husband immediately. Greg is at home." "He's very upset about this whole situation," Diana said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Bob refused to help us with a simple financial matter, and things got heated." "Heated," I spoke up, my voice stronger than I expected. "He ambushed me in my own home, Diana. He said, 'This is what happens to people who don't help family,' while he was attacking me. And you texted afterward that I should have just signed the mortgage." Officer Ramirez looked at Diana sharply. "You were aware of the assault?" "I knew they were going to talk," she stammered. Greg was frustrated, but I never thought. "We have the text message," my father interrupted. "You knew exactly what happened." Diana's expression hardened as she realized no one in the room was on her side. "Fine. If that's how you all want to play this, remember who started it by refusing to help family." She turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Bob, you can still fix this. Just sign the papers and we can forget this unfortunate incident." The silence after she left was deafening. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. "Sir, we will need that text message as evidence, and I recommend filing for a restraining order immediately. The hospital admitted me overnight for observation due to the concussion." The next morning, Detective Jackson from the Violent Crimes Unit came to take my formal statement. Unlike the uniformed officers, he asked penetrating questions about Greg and Diana's financial situation, their behavior patterns, and any previous incidents of aggression. "We have officers at your apartment now," he informed me. "The scene corroborates your account. More importantly, your building's security camera captured your brother-in-law entering and leaving. His demeanor on exit is particularly telling. My parents stayed with me throughout, my mother's hand rarely leaving mine." When Detective Jackson asked if I wanted to press charges, there was no hesitation. "Yes," I said firmly. "He needs to face consequences." The detective nodded approvingly. "The district attorney will likely pursue this regardless given the evidence. But your cooperation strengthens the case significantly." Later that day, as I was being discharged with my arm in a sling and prescriptions for pain medication, We learned that Greg had been arrested at his real estate office, led out in handcuffs in front of his colleagues. Diana had been calling my parents relentlessly, her messages evolving from demanding they control me to tearful pleas that I drop the charges. "Think about what this will do to Greg's career," she begged when my father finally answered. "We are family. Families forgive." "Families don't put each other in the hospital, Diana," he responded before hanging up. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. Greg's attorney attempted to portray the incident as a regrettable family disagreement that escalated due to heightened emotions on both sides. The prosecutor methodically dismantled this narrative, presenting the security footage photographs of my injuries and testimony from my neighbors who heard the assault. Most damning was Diana's text message, which the prosecutor characterized as showing prior knowledge and tacit approval of the assault as a coercive tactic. The judge denied bail, citing the viciousness of the attack and concern that Greg might attempt to intimidate me further. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly after that initial hearing. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prosecutor's determination to seek maximum penalties, Greg accepted a plea deal. Felony assault charges 3 years, probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a permanent restraining order. The financial consequences were swift and severe. Greg's real estate brokerage terminated him immediately, unwilling to associate with someone convicted of violent assault. Without his income, however, inconsistent it had been, Diana and Greg quickly fell behind on their mortgage payments. Within 6 months, foreclosure proceedings began on their luxury home. Diana initially maintained her stance that I had betrayed the family by pressing charges. She left angry voicemails accusing me of deliberately destroying their lives out of spite. As their financial situation deteriorated, however, her tone gradually changed. The designer handbags disappeared from her social media posts, replaced by complaints about job hunting and the unfairness of the current economic climate. My own recovery was a painful, gradual process. The physical injuries healed slowly, the shoulder requiring months of rehabilitation to regain full mobility, the facial fracture, leaving a slight asymmetry that I noticed in the mirror, though others assured me was invisible. The emotional wounds cut deeper. I jumped at unexpected sounds, had nightmares about being trapped and attacked, and developed anxiety about opening my door to visitors. My parents suggested therapy, and despite my initial resistance, I finally agreed. Dr. Winters, a trauma specialist, helped me process not just the physical assault but the profound sense of betrayal from Diana. "Your sister violated something fundamental," she explained during one session. "The belief that family equals safety. That breach of trust often hurts longer than physical injuries. Through therapy, I learned to rebuild my sense of security and establish healthier boundaries. I moved to a new apartment in a secure building with a doorman. I focused on strengthening relationships with genuine friends who had rallied around me during recovery. People like James from my office, who drove me to physical therapy appointments, and Kayla from my running club, who organized meal deliveries during my first weeks home from the hospital. 6 months after the assault, I received an unexpected email from Diana. Her tone was dramatically different from her previous communications, subdued, hesitant, almost humble. "I filed for divorce yesterday," she wrote. "The financial stress was part of it, but honestly, watching how Greg never showed real remorse for what he did to you forced me to see him clearly for the first time. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am truly deeply sorry, Bob. I failed you as a sister." I didn't respond immediately, discussing the email with Dr. Winters first. "Reconciliation is your choice," she advised. "And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can acknowledge her apology without immediately returning to a close relationship." My eventual reply was brief but honest. "I appreciate your apology, Diana. I need more time before we can rebuild any kind of relationship. I hope your divorce goes smoothly." Around this time, I began volunteering at a local crisis center, sharing my experience with other victims of violence. Through this work, I met Jessica, a social worker who specialized in family trauma. Our shared commitment to helping others recover from violence created a foundation for friendship that gradually developed into something deeper. Meanwhile, I learned through my parents that Diana had moved into a small apartment and found work as an administrative assistant at an accounting firm, a significant step down from her previous lifestyle, but a stable position with growth potential. She had also, they mentioned, cautiously started attending therapy herself. The 1-year anniversary of the assault arrived with less emotional impact than I had feared. I had dinner with my parents, who had been unfailingly supportive throughout my recovery. Over dessert, my father raised his glass in a toast to healing, to justice, and to learning who truly deserves our loyalty. 2 months later, Diana reached out again, asking if we could meet in a public place for coffee. After consulting with Jessica, who gently suggested that closure might benefit my continuing recovery, I agreed to a brief meeting at a busy cafe near my office. The Diana who arrived was nearly unrecognizable from the entitled, defensive woman who had stood in my hospital room. Gone were the designer clothes and superior attitude, replaced by simple business casual attire and an air of genuine humility. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her hands wrapped nervously around her coffee cup. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to apologize to your face. What I did supporting Greg, blaming you, it was unforgivable. Therapy has helped me see how toxic our relationship was, how he isolated me from our family, and how I lost myself trying to maintain the lifestyle he convinced me we deserved." "What about the investment property?" I asked, curious, despite myself. Diana gave a bitter laugh. "There never was one. The money was to cover debts he had hidden from me. We were months behind on everything: the house, the car payments, credit cards. He had even taken out loans in my name without telling me." She shook her head. "My credit score will recover eventually, but the most valuable thing I lost was my relationship with you. By the 18-month mark, I had established a new normal. My shoulder occasionally ached in cold weather, a physical reminder of that night, but I had regained full function. Jessica and I moved in together, creating a home filled with warmth and mutual respect. My career advanced with a promotion to senior project manager. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my sense of security and rebuilt my understanding of what family truly means. Diana and I now meet occasionally for lunch. Our relationship is different, cautious, deliberate, bounded by new awareness on both sides. She continues to work at the accounting firm, recently earning a promotion that allowed her to start paying down the debt Greg left behind. She dates occasionally, but says she's in no hurry to remarry, focusing instead on rebuilding herself. The most profound lesson I learned through all this is that true family is defined not by blood, but by respect, care, and mutual support. The people who stand by you in crisis, who honor your boundaries, who celebrate your healing, those are your real family, whether connected by DNA or by choice. Obligation without respect is not family loyalty. It is exploitation. Love without boundaries is not devotion, it is surrender. I lost an illusion of family, but gained authentic connections built on honesty and genuine care. Has someone you trusted ever betrayed you? How did you rebuild afterward? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to set boundaries with family. Thank you for listening to my journey from victim to survivor.